That's good. All right, very good. Good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Smyser with the DA's office out here in San Bernardino County. I'm a senior investigator. I am the chair of the Region 6 board, which covers Inyo, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties. And we have quite a robust region. We've rebuilt the region back up, but something that comes to mind is that in our region, when we talk about engaging the community, I came out here from another region when I started at the DA's office out here. I was in then Region 1, which was the Orange County area. And Orange County did a very, very good job of engaging the communities. But when I came out here, I noticed that it was even better. Riverside and San Bernardino in particular are really engaging with their communities, especially when it comes to social media and to the news media. And I jotted down some notes, so if I look down a lot, I apologize, but I'm gonna make sure that I cover everything that I wanted to here. For instance, in our office, at the DA's office, we use Instagram, we use Twitter, and we use Facebook as our primary way of getting a message out to the people. We've just started something. I just spoke with our PIO today and made sure that he had something he wanted to share. And he wanted to share that we've started something new called live stream video. And he's actually going to be on live stream tonight at about 7:30, I believe. And I don't know where he's going or what he's doing, but he goes around the county and he engages the community. And then he also live streams that on Instagram. And he and I both wanted to make sure that we'd mentioned to you folks that the source quality when you're doing these videos, when you're doing these postings and that type of thing is very, very important. It draws people into your site. It draws people into you as the agency. And you want to project that positive image. You want to project something that is, what I just said, but positive in nature, but you want to make sure that it's engaging. It's something that people want to hear. Right now, we've got a lot of information out there. In fact, there's so much information out there, it's almost information overload. But you want to make sure that yours stands apart from what is going on out there and that you're delivering the right message at the right time. So we're successful and we're getting recognized for that because of the way that we use our social media. And I'm going to open up my phone real quick because I want to just share with you briefly. I've got it open to our San Bernardino County DA's Instagram page. And on our page, we have buttons on that Instagram page that you can actually hit to get right to specific information. And what do you think the first button out there right now is COVID-19. So everybody hits that button and you get some specific information on that. Well, we also are able to advertise our careers, any news that's engaging and that type of thing on those buttons. But down in some of the recent posts that they've done, that we've done out here, we've done some things around the office where we have a couple of canines that are victim advocate canines, and we show them in what they're doing, and it draws people in. And naturally, animals draw people in anyway, but this draws people in. We're also posting up information for folks that, especially like the stay-at-home stuff that's going on right now. I'm sure that Lieutenant and the Deputy Chief can talk later on about this, but the increase of calls for service for domestic violence and domestic violence victims in particular. Well, we posted something on there, resources for domestic violence victims, and if you're being abused and you're quarantined, what to do and how to get help. We posted some things on there about the COVID-19 scams and the fraud alerts and how to go and get information regarding that and how to report it. And we're very, very successful in doing that. We just last week posted up in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department, the DA got on board and posted up his response to the zero bail that's out there right now. We'll discuss that later, I'm sure. But you know that where there's no bail right now, everybody's getting set free. And his response to that, our DA's response to that, is very, very engaging. And at the same time, the Sheriff's Department did the same thing with Sheriff McMahon, and they posted up theirs as well. And the bottom line with that is they were both very, very consistent in their message. It was almost like they were sitting side by side as they were delivering their message. The idea in your messaging is to be consistent with your agencies that are around and near you. Make sure you're engaging the other PIOs and the other folks that are putting this stuff out, because that consistency will drive our message home as law enforcement. That main consistency in what we do and how we act will make us in a positive light, and it will get that message out there the way that we want it delivered. Our PIO, Michael Byers, said that if anybody has any questions or any concerns on this and they want to run stuff by him, please feel free. You can reach out to me later, or you can reach out directly to him. He's more than happy to discuss what he does on our level at the DA's office here, but also for what his partner did in Riverside County for a while. And I know that Riverside County is very, very engaged in what they do too. So all this stuff has got to be consistent. And last but not least, accuracy counts. Make sure you're accurate. Make sure you fact check everything that's going out there. Make sure that you have the right information that's going out to the right people, and that it is something, because all the false information that's out there right now, we don't know what's accurate and what's not, but make sure you fact checked everything. And for that, Shaun, I don't know if you want to throw up that poll and let's see what the other agencies are doing out there as far as their engagement. Are you using social media? Are you social distancing education? Are you doing both? What are you doing with your social medias? And we'll see what in your engagement. We'll see how that pops up here. And we'll open that up to anybody have any questions. You can type into the chat room, or you can hit me up later. So
we'll leave this poll open for just a few more seconds here. We're starting to see about half, 50% voted. So we'll start to see these responses. But any questions for Bill while that's finishing?
Yeah, I'm not seeing much. There's a couple other things I just wanted to say really, really quick. Just when you do these social media postings and your media postings, just remember, you get to drive the message. You get to drive the narrative. It's not somebody else that's a talking head out there delivering your message. You get to drive it and tell what you wanted. And that's important. And you got to step out of your comfort zone in some of these things and how you do it and how you engage the community. Some of it, we just want to be that talking head, but don't do that. Make sure that you're engaged with what you're doing and you're happy and you present that professional image. And it looks like we got the pullback. It looks like we got 92% are doing social distancing education via social media, along with about half and half for the other two. So looks good.
So if there's no questions for Bill, either via chat or if anyone's unmuted, we'll give it one more second. If not, then I'll throw it over to Eric Swift, a lieutenant with Napa County Sheriff's Office, to discuss how things are going for them. He is chair of our Region 8, kind of our wine country Napa Valley region. So LT, it's all yours.
Thanks, Shaun. Hey, Bill, I just wanted to follow up with you for the engagement piece. So for us, one of the things that we also tried to do with our PIO was to incorporate our community. We focused on the kids at times and then the adults, but we've been having the weekly contests. So the kids and adults are coming up with ideas on how COVID-19, or how to stay safe from COVID-19 and some of the other things that they're doing while they're sheltering at home. So we've seen some good responses from that as far as the community being engaged in not only learning and talking about COVID-19, but some ideas and ways that they've been able to cope with COVID-19. So that's been pretty good.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
So for the new norm, that's a very interesting question. And I say that for the fact that in the past, when we've dealt with disasters such as fires, floods, earthquakes, we've always been able to tell pretty much when it was over. And for us in law enforcement, we've always been able to make that decision when we're going to flip the switch and go back to normal operations. I'd say in this instance, it's a little different from the sheer fact of this is something that we've never seen before or dealt with. And it's been pretty comprehensive, not only to any specific region, but worldwide. So it's one of those events that's the uncertainty is there. There's more questions than answers. So I'm very curious when we do the poll as far as other agencies, how they're looking at this. For our agency, staffing wise, we didn't change as much because we were already on the 12-hour rotation shifts. So patrols stayed the same. We did pull our investigations off-site, so they telecommuted from home. along with most of the professional staff and some of our specialty units. So for us, looking ahead, it's easy for us now to, down the road, to bring those investigators back to our office, bring the professional staff back, and then most of our specialty units come back to our office. Staffing wise, we don't see any deviation. We'll pretty much stay intact, except we have a task force or narcotics task force that's countywide. And we do believe, looking down the road, that's probably going to be impacted with personnel shortage, just because other agencies that staff it might have some challenges. So we might have to look at how we're going to move forward, reorganizing that unit. But our other specialty units should stay intact. Calls for service and reporting. For us, we've always prided ourselves on the customer service for our agency. What I mean by that is we've always focused on taking reports in person, showing up on the scene. We prefer that over doing the online reporting or the phone reporting. So our plan is to go back to that. Of course, we recognize that it won't be just as it was before. We recognize that we'll have to take in consideration recommendations from health experts. We also recognize that some of those citizens might not want the contact with law enforcement moving forward. They still might be a little hesitant for us to show up in person. So we will be respectful of that. And if they prefer that, the phone reporting or the online, of course, we'll respect that. But our plan is to go back to how it was as far as showing up unseen. Being proactive, I think across the board, everyone has, during this time, has pulled back. We've done the same, but what we've recognized is the criminals, they initially pulled back, but we've seen them be very active and committing a lot more crimes recently. So our intent is to have our deputies be, once again, be more proactive. And we recognize that the court system is going to be impacted. They're going to be backlogged. We recognize that the jails are also going to have some limitations. But for us, what we've seen, some of the trends is we've seen that the criminals, like I said, are more active. So we want our deputies to be out in the public. We want them to show that presence, but we also want them to take action when it's needed, because that's how we're going to keep our community safe, as opposed to just staying back and letting the criminals roam. So those are some things that we're looking at. Another thing that we're looking at is, because of the COVID-19, we've had to put our FTO training program on hold, which it was because we were not making the contacts, because we weren't getting the calls for service, because we weren't being proactive. We weren't able to train the trainees, give them the depth or the volume of calls that they need for the training. So we've had to put that on hold. But our plan is to go back once, like I said, we're more proactive, we're more responding to those calls, that we will be able to start that program once again and get our deputies the training that they need. Shaun, I don't know if you can put that poll up and just see, maybe some people can, maybe it's prompting them to think about some things, or see if they have any plans as far as going back to the normal or new normal.
Yep, so that poll question's up, so if you could please answer that. If you have a plan yet, don't have a plan, or it's currently being discussed, and we'll kind of share. And then also in the chat box, I also asked what types of crimes folks are seeing in your area during these times, and we've heard a couple responses so far, auto burgs up, and some other responses. So we'll leave the poll question up for just another few seconds to let everyone respond to that, and respond to the chat as well.
And that's what we're seeing too in our county, is the auto burgs are up, commercial burgs. We're also seeing the mail theft those are some of the ones that we're seeing that are up over the last few weeks.
And then as you can see for the poll results, most folks are currently in the discussion phase about that return to normal. So hopefully this helps kind of think about what some of the aspects of that could be.
And a couple more things for us. Also, during this time, we've had to put our hiring on hold. I think most agencies have. So once again, our plan is to continue with our hiring. You know, we've had deputies retire since or during this incident too. So we do need that staffing to continue to give our community the support and to be able to provide those services for them. We need to continue to hire and staff. So we're going to continue that. We're also looking at continuing with our mandated post-training. During this time, what we've also noticed, Bill talked about social media platforms. One of the things that we've also seen during this time is there's probably some benefits to some of these platforms. Zoom that we're on right now is one of them. Some of the virtual training. So we're going to look at some of those options, recognizing down the road, and I know Deputy Chief Borges is going to talk about some budgetary things. So we do recognize that that we can get some pretty effective training at cost saving using some of these social media platforms. So that's one of the things too that we're looking at down the road.
Any questions or comments for the lieutenant, or anything similar that you're experiencing that anyone wants to share on the kind of return to normal? So it looks like per the chat, we see a lot of auto burgs and domestic abuse or vehicle burgs and DV. So you're starting to see some trends across the board here. But obviously this whole pandemic has created some significant challenges, as the LT just mentioned, regarding hiring, but also some fiscal challenges as well. So there's definitely some responses to those. So with that, I'll turn it over to DC Borges from Seaside, from our Region 1, which I mentioned again is kind of our north central coast area. And with that, sir, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Shaun. Just to add on to what Lieutenant Swift said, just a couple of things that we're doing in Seaside. Obviously, Zoom has become a new norm in terms of how we communicate with one another. So a lot of our meetings and outreach has been via social media and Zoom. One of the things we just launched that we're just trying to implement to reach out to the public is a virtual ride-along. And essentially, it's just a Skype interview where a member of the community can call in, they can schedule an appointment, we can assign an officer who has Skype on their work phone, and they can email or call in that number and just have a one-on-one conversation similar to what we're doing now, just to keep that communication going with the public, because we don't want to reverse all the community policing efforts we put into all these years. So that's something we're working on. Also too, there's a lot of organizations throughout the state who are using Axon body cams. And if you are using Axon, they have a free feature of a citizen outreach app that you can use as a link to reach out to encourage people to submit videos and other evidentiary things to help you resolve cases. So we've just launched that as well. And again, it's free. And also, I know a lot of California agencies are using Lexipol, and through Lexipol, they have a free online COVID-19 training platform. It's an entire system where you can just educate your staff about the new evolving aspects of COVID-19 and a lot of the things we're discussing today, and it's for free. So just something to think about as you move forward, getting back into the norm. And now the fun part, budget. So as we all know, in 2008, 2009, we faced something that is comparable somewhat to what we're dealing with today. And we saw the impact that it had on our organizations. We experienced pay cuts, layoffs, staffing levels, all these things were cut across the board. And at least in our region, it took us several years to really get back to some form of normalcy. And we're not immune today, at least in our region, and I speak for our organization. We are experiencing a potential of some serious budget cuts. Seaside is a population of about 34,000. We have about 34 sworn officers and a $13 million budget. Right next door to us is kind of the world famous city of Monterey. It's a beautiful community, has a high tourism rate, and just recently they laid off 84 employees within the city, and they reduced costs, from my understanding, of at least 100 more. And from what I've been told, they haven't touched their public safety aspects at this point. But again, it's just common sense that this could potentially touch all of us as it relates to finances, and we are not immune. So I think Lieutenant Snell had mentioned this about hiring freezes and spending freezes. That's something that we're considering, and we're still in the early stages, but it's on the table. We want to hire people, but again, are we going to be able to sustain the staffing and the cost? We don't know. It's not looking very good for us and a lot of agencies throughout California, depending on where you are. But spending freezes is definitely something that we may have to look at. Hiring freezes for sure. And, you know, nobody likes to say it, but layoffs are always on the table. And you start looking at, you know, people that you've hired in the last 6 months or a year, or people you may have in background. All these positions now could potentially be at a loss. So that's something that we're discussing right now, is whether or not we're going to be able to make enough cuts within our budget to avoid these things. And I will say, just in my view of looking at the budget, it's not looking very good. Some other options that we've talked about, and some agencies have already done, is they've already eliminated some specialty assignments, whether it be school resource, K-9, if they have an excess in detectives or community liaison. They're having to reposition these folks or repurpose these folks back to the patrol ranks to get them out to do the line level stuff. Equipment, you know, we talked about body cameras. You look at the maintenance of body cameras, depending on the size of your organization. For us, it's about $55,000 every other year just to maintain body cameras. And then we had to hire, about a year ago, a person just to fill the spot to manage our body worn camera program. So all these positions, hopefully they're not touched, but these are all significant things that we were very progressive, and now we're starting to look at ways to backpedal just a little bit. Obviously overtime, you know, look at what COVID-19 has done to our organization throughout the state, and it's created quite a bit of overtime. We may have to cut overtime substantially, and to service the community adequately and cut overtime, that's always a fine balance that our organizations are going to have to look at. I also recommend to agencies to look at some of your existing contracts and services that you have, because in the last several years, technology has really had a boom. And there's a lot of programs out there that agencies have invested in. And there's contracts that expire every year, every other year, depending on what they are. And those are areas where potentially we may have to cut back on some of those things so we can save personnel. I really feel that our personnel are the most valuable asset in our organization. And if there's other areas we can cut besides our personnel, we really need to explore those. And again, that's something we are doing in our area right now, having these discussions. Pay cuts are always on the table. You know, for Seaside, at the end of this year, every bargaining group, their contract expires. And it's just an awful time to go into negotiations when this is occurring, because pay cuts are always going to be something discussed. So it's something that we're experiencing. I fear it, and something just to really be aware of, that it could happen where you are as well. We also had a $30,000 hiring bonus, and we still have it, for lateral police officers. That is something, I don't know what the future is for that, but I can't imagine, with significant pay cuts and the impact on our economy, us maintaining that. We may, but at this point, I just think it's going to be a challenge. And we all have to understand this, that through the last several months of the COVID-19 pandemic, all of us have had to do more with less. For us, we actually sent certain individual non-essential employees home and paid them paid leave to work from home just to maintain social distancing. So we've done a lot more with a lot less personnel. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because we're resilient in law enforcement, and this is what we do during a crisis. And then it's a negative thing, because if we're doing more with less, it's very difficult to justify certain spending and personnel. So I'm just concerned that we're going to have some budget dilemmas in the near future. I'm hopeful that the economy will open up as soon as possible, at least in stages, in a safe manner. But budget is certainly something that we're going to have to deal with here in the next year, hopefully less, but maybe even longer. So with that, Shaun, if you don't mind, just to put up the budgetary poll question. I'd like to see what everyone else is experiencing in their region, and I'll take any questions if anyone has any questions regarding budget.
Any questions or thoughts for the chief on this topic? And appreciate everyone responding to the poll question. That should be, does your city or county project financial hits yet? But yeah, I think we're seeing different impacts in different areas depending on what resources and populations you serve, and the capacity of your departments, both your sworn and professional staff. So we'll give it another few seconds here, and then we'll share the results of this poll.
Chief, this is Carol Leveroni, the Executive Director of CPOA, and it's a little self-serving, but I do have a question about, obviously your budget cuts are going to impact probably, hopefully not, but possibly your relationship with CPOA. So I'm curious if there's any thoughts from you or the panelists, or even those on the call, about how CPOA and organizations like CPOA can continue to play a role, a helpful role, enough of a helpful role in your organizations so that we won't be an easy budget cut.
Yeah, Carol, I think that's a great question. And part of the reason why I'm sitting here today is because of what CPOA has done and offered all these complimentary leads sessions. I became involved in them after talking to some folks that I went to the FBI Academy with, and I've registered for a couple already. And I think this, right now, what we're doing is extremely helpful, because I do believe many of our agencies are going to face severe budget cuts. But with things like this, it's very easy for me in my role to justify maintaining a partnership with CPOA when there's this kind of information that's so beneficial to all of us, and all of us are contributing to making us all better. So I'm not very concerned about our particular relationship moving forward. And I think these type of sessions are going to be very beneficial moving forward.
Carol, I'd like to say I agree with Deputy Chief Borges, what he said. I also think that CPOA has a great opportunity at this point, because there's a lot of agencies that will look at training as reducing their training budget. And CPOA, with the capability of doing things like this, other virtual classes, will allow those agencies to continue to get the training they need, but also to be able to justify keeping on that relationship with CPOA. So I think it's a great opportunity for CPOA at this time.
Well, I appreciate hearing that. Obviously, our biggest concern is this, right? Is providing these opportunities and making sure that we are a use for all of you guys right now. So, it's something we're preparing for as well, but we certainly do want to continue to play a role in being helpful with these issues. So I like hearing that. We'll see how it all plays out, though.
Hey, Carol, it's Bill Smyser. Just one other thing to think about is the advocacy that is presented at the Capitol, and how we can drive some of those things. Out of a crisis comes opportunity, and making that opportunity to drive some of the messages at the Capitol is also something that CPOA does very well, and we need to continue.
Yep, certainly something, and one of the other hats that I wear is doing that advocacy work. And I'll tell you that even though the legislature is on recess right now, there's still conversations happening on some of these bills, so it's not completely dark. So just know that those are still continuing as well. But per Bill's point, yeah, we'll definitely keep that going, because we know it's important to, and we'll do our best to keep everyone abreast of what's happening in those conversations in those halls. But we do have a number of folks. So that, again, there's the result of that budget. So it looks like a majority of folks are projecting budget hits, which doesn't seem too much of a big surprise. But anyone on the line that has any, or that's participating that has anything happening in your region, we again want to encourage everyone to let us know what's going on in your area, because I know just looking at the participant list, we come from all over. So anything for the good of the group, or any questions for any of the panelists, or anything you'd like to share from what's happening in your area?
Hey, Shaun, real quick, just for Nick Borges, this is Jeff Snell. Quick question. With all these projected budget hits that his department is looking at, what impact is that having on morale, and what, if anything, is being done to help sort of foster better morale? I mean, these are always difficult times when people start seeing their jobs maybe on the line. What can we do to support our people and to increase morale?
That's a great question. And because we're so early on in the game here with talking about these budget things, we haven't seen a huge impact on morale. But again, anyone that's been around since 2008 and 9, you know how this impacts our staffing levels. People could get bumped, people could get laid off, pay cuts, you name it. It really hurts our morale, and it's very difficult to sustain that. But I will say we have something that's very useful to us, and it is social media. And through social media, we can really be grateful for the people that we have and value them and celebrate these folks. I mean, we have people that are working wild, crazy shifts. Some agencies are working 7, 10, 12 days in a row just to split up their organization. So we really need to highlight and celebrate our folks that are working and be in this together, from an admin perspective all the way down to the line level folks. This is going to impact all of us, and I think we need to maintain a positive mental attitude through this, and we will get through this. It's going to be difficult. It may be a few years, hopefully not, but we need to remain positive and really celebrate and value those that we have.
Thanks, DC. Seeing any other final questions before we wrap up? Because I know we're a little over our time. Well, thank you again to you gentlemen for participating, and for all of those that logged in. A reminder for Thursday session, all of these lead sessions are at 1100 hours. So Thursday session again is resilience, the author of Resilience During the Pandemic, Nick Arnett. And he'll be discussing kind of this third stage of disaster, you know, how you can respond to those folks in your community that are getting a little antsy and, you know, wanting to just get outside. So if there's no other final thoughts, then we will end this session and thank everyone for participating, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one. And again, thanks to our facilitators for your participation, very insightful. So we appreciate your time. Thanks all.
Thank you.